Beneath the Roses by Edwina Longbottom, Chapter 1, Roots of the Forgotten. The morning sun was little more than a cold gleam on the polished windows of Maple Grove, a pristine Leeds suburb where secrets were supposed to stay buried beneath expensive turf and family-friendly facades. But today, one of those secrets had clawed its way back to the surface.
"Keep the gawkers back," DCI Hannah Sterling snapped as she ducked under the police tape. "And tell forensics I want the garden photographed before anyone so much as breathes on that soil."
The garden was a bloody picture postcard, neatly trimmed hedges, roses in full bloom, and smack in the middle a shallow, raw gash of unearthed earth, like the garden itself had vomited up the truth. A body, female, young, pale as frost.
"The homeowner's in shock," DS Annika Rao murmured, flipping her notebook closed. "Says she found it while watering the peonies. Thought it was a bloody badger at first." "Must be been one hell of a badger," Hannah said dryly, squatting beside the grave. Her knee pressed into the damp lawn. She didn't flinch. She'd seen worse. She just hadn't seen this.
Dr. Felix Morrow loomed beside her, forensic case in hand. Female, mid to late 20s, no defensive wounds, no blood, not a single scratch. It's like someone just placed her here, lovingly. Ewan Lister, crime scene photographer, adjusted his lens and clicked. "Like a doll," he muttered. "Too perfect, too staged. No ID, clothes are clean, no bruising. She's not from here, not recently. I ran an early scan. Body's been dead maybe 2 days, tops. But there's no decay, no insects. It's like nature didn't touch her." Hannah's gloved hand brushed something at the edge of the disturbed soil. A scrap of paper, weathered, torn, ink barely legible.
"She walks in gardens," she read aloud. "The fuck does that mean?"
"It's old. This isn't modern parchment, looks pre-war. This paper's got history." He sniffed it. "And rose oil. Someone wanted this found." A quiet cough broke the moment. Father Malachi Quinn stood at the edge of the lawn, summoned to provide community support or last rites, depending on how things played out.
"She walks in gardens that's not just poetic, could be biblical, Song of Solomon, or older, pagan even. Earthbound spirits, female archetypes, there's mythology here."
Or someone's taking the piss with some floral greeting card ritual.
"Whatever it is, it's intentional." She rose, folding the paper carefully. "We were not dealing with random dumping. This was curated."
The air shifted. One of those moments where you feel something crack beneath reality's surface. A dog barked down the street. A crow perched on the garden wall, watching with too much intelligence.
"I'll run a sweep for any similar phrases in case files or cultural references. If this is part of a pattern, it's not going to be isolated."
"Good, Felix. I want a post-mortem in toxicology on my desk by sunrise. Ewan, double-check all camera data, something's off. And Father, I'll consult the local parish archives. If this is rooted in folk ritual, we'll need more than forensics."
Hannah lingered as the team dispersed. The garden was quiet again, save for the buzz of crime scene cameras and the rustle of rose leaves in the breeze. The scent wasn't comforting. It was cloying, too sweet, like death trying to smell like spring.
"We're not just digging up bones. We were digging up something that never wanted to be disturbed."
She turned toward the flashing blue lights and the forming crowd. Somewhere among the faces, she thought she saw one too still, too pale. But when she looked again, it was gone. Chapter 2. Echoes in the Glen. The Highlands wore their silence like a shroud. Mist curled around the hills of Glencoe, cloaking the ancient scars of betrayal and massacre in a silver veil. The road wound narrow and uncertain between brooding slopes, the sky threatening rain that had already begun in spirit.
"It feels wrong up here," Annika said softly, her forehead pressed to the window of the team's SUV, "like the land's watching us."
"That's just Glencoe," Felix replied from the front, site of the 1692 massacre. 38 murdered in their sleep. The land is watching. It remembers. Hannah Sterling drove without comment. Her eyes were on the curve ahead, but her mind was back in Leeds, replaying that perfect corpse and the note that refused to leave her thoughts. She walks in gardens, another body, this time in a remote village tucked beneath a craggy glen. Same condition, same uncanny placement, different soil, same plague. The village wasn't much 4 stone cottages, a sheepfold, a pub that hadn't opened in 5 years. Locals watched from windows as the unmarked black vehicle pulled up outside a cottage, guarded by yellow tape and a grim-faced local constable. "Morning," Constable MacLeod greeted, shifting from foot to foot as Hannah stepped out. "We've left the site untouched. Didn't want to upset anything that might escalate."
Good call. Let's hope we were not already too late.
The garden behind the cottage was modest wild grasses and stubborn roots, but the shape of the soil told the story again. Another body, female, no ID, no marks. "It's the same," he said, voice tight. "Everything, the way the body's curled, palms up, eyes closed, no decomposition, even the scent, it's neutral." "She looks like she's been planted," Ewan muttered, "like something expected her to grow." Annika stepped back from the grave and felt the pressure, a hum in her ears that had nothing to do with altitude. The world tilted. Her breath caught.
Not again, not here. The mist around her thickened, her eyes glazed over.
Suddenly, she was elsewhere. The ground below her feet pulsed with life. A garden unlike any she'd known spread around her, lush, riotous, unbound, colors too vivid, leaves that whispered. And in the center, a woman, still, watching, skin like bark, eyes fathomless.
You seek what was never lost, only hidden, the roots remember.
Annika gasped and fell backward, hitting the frosty earth. Ewan was at her side in seconds. "She needs air, Annika. What happened?"
I saw her, the woman, again, and the garden. It was alive, she said, the roots remember.
Did she say anything else? No, but the meaning felt older than language, like the land itself is trying to speak.
The team exchanged glances. Father Quinn crossed himself silently. The priest looked 10 years older than yesterday.
There are stories, legends, about the Highland moors, about gardens grown from grief, burials that aren't for the dead but for secrets.
Well, this one's talking, and it's choosing women.
The elderly woman who owned the cottage stood waiting for them when they returned. Her name was Mary Ferguson, white-haired, glassy-eyed, her spine crooked like a sapling twisted in wind. "You've seen her, haven't you?"
I think so.
"Come in. You need to hear what they never wrote down." The fire cracked. The room smelled of salt and thyme. Mary sat in a rocking chair as the team gathered. "She's always been here. Long before the church, long before fences, the garden woman. She guards the boundaries between soil and soul. When the balance is broken, she doesn't kill, she reclaims." "You were saying these bodies were claimed as what? Offerings?" "As warnings, as signs. Someone stirred the earth wrong. Something that was buried in oath, maybe. A ritual unfinished. And now she's come walking again."
And where does this hollow root circle come in? She didn't answer, not at first.
They weren't supposed to last this long. Outside, the mist was lifting, but inside, a deeper fog thickened.
Pack it in. We need everything recorded. Mary's story, Felix report. Annika, write down everything you saw.
This case was folklore 2 days ago. Now it's fucking breathing down our necks and breathing through the soil.
As they left the cottage, Mary watched them from the threshold. She did not wave goodbye, just stared at Annika like she knew something none of them wanted to believe.
It's in the roots. It's always been in the roots.
The wind chased them down the glen, cold and insistent, like fingers brushing at the backs of their necks. Behind them, in the shadowed garden, the earth waited. Chapter 3. Patterns Beneath the Stone. Cornwall was deceptively bright that morning. Sunlight filtered through the glass of the coastal train station as the team's rental car climbed the winding lane toward the clifftop village of Penmara. Birds chirped. Lawns were manicured. A retired barrister's garden awaited them, along with another dead woman lying perfectly still beneath an ornamental pear tree.
This one's closer to a mansion than a cottage, Hannah muttered as they passed sculpted hedges. Can wait to hear what skeletons are rattling in his closet.
Probably buried between the croquet lawn and the herbaceous border.
The garden was a geometric marvel, precise to the millimeter. Gravel paths intersected like spokes on a wheel. Flowers bloomed in color-coded clusters. And in the center, laid out like an offering on velvet, was the body. A woman. Again. No blood, no decay. Hands folded like she was waiting for judgment. Same profile, same age, same zero trauma, but there's something else. Felix crouched near the torso. She's resting on a bed of sage. Intentional, almost medicinal.
And symbolic.
At her feet, Annika found 3 stones arranged in a spiral. She didn't need a book to know that wasn't random.
All right, gloves on. Photograph every square inch of this place. I want timestamps, drone footage, everything.
The man himself appeared from the rear conservatory. Gerald Haversham, polished loafers, waistcoat, thin white hair combed into reluctant submission. But the eyes, that's where the unease lived.
Detective Sterling, is it? And your entourage. You've come to spoil my garden party, I take it?
Mr. Haversham, one of your flower beds is a fucking crime scene. If you were holding a party, you'd better cancel the canaps.
The team followed him inside. The study was a cathedral of law books and whiskey decanters. The smell of cigar smoke lingered like it had tenure. Your landscaping, it's precise, more like architecture than horticulture.
My wife designed it. She had a thing for order. Symmetry soothed her.
And the symbols, the spiral patterns, the buried woman.
My wife also had interests, occult patterns, folk rituals. She believed in old energies. I thought it was eccentricity. I didn't question her arrangements.
He was lying, not about everything, but about enough.
Hannah, the house has wards. What? Symbols etched into the corners of the windows. Iron nails hammered into the garden wall. This place isn't just decorated, it's sealed.
They reconvened outside as forensics packed up the body. The scent of lavender clung to the air, but it was too strong, too intentional. These sigils, they aren't just random shapes. They realigned with ley lines. I checked the map against the bodies we've found. There's geometry to this. It's mapped. You think he's part of it? No, I think his wife was. Hannah walked back to the garden, alone this time. She followed the neat gravel paths until she stood at the center. There, on the stone fountain, was a line scratched into the rim. Weathered, but legible. She who walks is watching. And then quietly, like a tide sliding under the door, her childhood returned. Her mother's garden, that same phrase whispered when no one else was home. And the roses, always the roses.
No, not this again.
Footsteps. Ewan appeared, his usual sardonic energy dulled. You all right?
Yeah, just memories. Places like this stir shit up.
As they left the property, Gerald stood at his window, watching, hands trembling. Inside his desk drawer sat a ring, a crude band of twine and pressed herbs wrapped around a name scrawled in Latin radix. Sacrificium, vigila, root, sacrifice, watch. Outside, a crow landed on the empty fountain. It let out a single cry, then flew toward the sea. Chapter 4. The Breathing Earth. The Norfolk Broads didn't welcome visitors, not really. They tolerated them, boats drifting through reed-choked channels, city families renting cottages for their Instagram summers. But underneath the flat horizon, the wetlands remembered everything. Drownings, rituals, secrets sucked deep into the silt. The team stood ankle-deep in cold marsh water, the air around them thick with rot and pollen. Not a breeze. Just silence and the buzz of insects too old to fear men. Something's off. The soil pH is wrong, completely wrong. Alkalinity shouldn't be this high here. It's like the land's been chemically altered.
You think someone's poisoning the earth?
No, I think the Earth's reacting, like it's alive.
They moved carefully toward the edge of a clearing where tall reeds bowed in unnatural symmetry around a sunken patch of land. Another garden, less cultivated, more primitive, overgrown and wild, but still ordered. There it is again, the spiral.
Same design as the Cornish garden, same pattern I saw in my dream last night.
The remnants of a festival lay scattered across the clearing. Burnt posts, decayed ribbons, rusted bells dangling from branches. Something older than memory had happened here. And recently, someone had dug here. Another woman's body, perfectly preserved in the acidic peat.
He made the sign of the cross, but it looked like a reflex. His hand trembled.
Father, you recognize this setup?
I've read about it in diocesan archives, something called the Hollow Root Circle, a folk sect from the 1970s, blended Christianity with Druidic rites, secretive, excommunicated, supposedly disbanded after 3 deaths during a binding ritual.
Let me guess, all women?
All buried in gardens, all pristine, all in spirals.
And no one thought to mention this before?
It was buried for a reason.
Annika stepped away from the group. The air near the center of the clearing was heavy, pressing against her like a second skin. The reeds began to whisper. Not the wind, there was no wind. She dropped to her knees as a vision crashed over her like a wave. She was in the middle of a bonfire ring, dozens of cloaked figures, chanting, spirals drawn in ash, a woman kneeling in the center, head bowed, blood in the soil. The garden woman watching from the tree line, silent, disapproving, then screams. A burst of light and silence. Annika came to with Hannah gripping her shoulders.
Enough. You're done with these fucking visions until we can figure out what's triggering them. They were trying to bind her, the garden woman. They used women as anchors. It didn't work. It only woke her up.
So all these women, they weren't just victims, they were fucking tools. The sun dipped lower, turning the marsh into a mirror of golden water. The land groaned, just once, like something old rolling in its sleep.
Jesus, the soil just spiked again. It's like it's responding to her, to Annika. She's a conduit, that's why she sees. That's why it sees her.
All right, we isolate this site. Lock it down. Felix, I want a full chemical analysis. Annika, you were not to leave the van unless I say so. You were a target now. And I've always been a target, I just didn't know it.
As they left the site, the marsh swallowed the clearing behind them, mist rolling in like a curtain closing on a play no one wanted to see twice. Somewhere beneath the reeds, the earth pulsed, the spiral shifted, and roots tightened like fingers around a secret. Chapter 5, Glitches in the Garden. The rain hammered down on the roof of the mobile HQ van, turning the Birmingham outskirts into a puddled mess of gray skies and blinking taillights. Inside the cramped vehicle, blue-lit screens cast ghostly reflections across tired faces. Caffeine cups stacked like sandbags, wires curled like ivy. The only thing louder than the rain was the silence. Watch this, you are not going to believe it. He tapped a key. The CCTV footage rolled across the screen. It was from Leeds Maple Grove. The first body, time-stamped 2 hours before the discovery, the garden looked quiet, empty. Then, static, just a flicker, a ripple, like the footage blinked. When the image came back, the garden was unchanged, except there was a shape now, a barely discernible outline. Then, nothing.
Slow it.
Thought it was compression artifacts, but it's on every site we've been to. Same hour, same moment, a surge, a flicker.
It's like time stuttered.
It could be a coincidence, interference, magnetic fluctuation. Coincidences don't show up in 6 different towns, at 6 different grave sites, all tied to the same fucking flowers and ghost notes. Hannah rubbed her temple, eyes fixed on the screen. Something had been nagging her.
Where did all these people buy their roses? What?
Every property had a garden, well-maintained, cultivated, ornamental. It's not just a coincidence. We were missing the middle link, where the soil came from, the plants.
Ewan pulled up receipts. It didn't take long. Green Thumb Gardens, Birmingham. Every single one of them. All the owners bought something there in the past 2 years. Compost, rose bushes, decorative stone.
So the source isn't just spiritual, it's commercial.
Spiritual forces don't care how they repackaged. If someone's bottling power through soil, it would explain why the land's acting like it's possessed.
Green Thumb Gardens was a sprawling complex just outside Birmingham proper. Rows of glass greenhouses, neat car parks, a deceptively cheerful welcome sign. Plant life, grow dreams.
Not ominous at all. Let's go talk to whoever's running this pastoral hellscape.
Inside, the garden center smelled of damp mulch, cinnamon candles, and rot barely hidden beneath fertilizer. The plants were too green, too symmetrical. Rows of orchids and foxglove looked like they'd been grown with a scalpel.
Welcome. I'm Martin. Can I interest you in our Shade Bloom collection?
DCI Hannah Sterling. This isn't a customer visit. We need to ask you some questions.
Of course, you'll want to see the logs. We're fully transparent here.
Martin led them through aisles that seemed to breathe. Felix trailed behind, scanning leaves that shimmered with unfamiliar textures. Annika's skin crawled the deeper they went. Something pulsed beneath the floor. These aren't standard cultivars. Look at this. He touched a thornless rose. Its petals shimmered like oil in water.
Hybrids, exotic imports, you know the market.
No.
He's lying.
You've had customers who were later found dead. Same pattern, same plants. I want access to your shipping manifests, your supplier contacts, and your restricted greenhouse, now. You don't have jurisdiction for that.
Try me.
He led them through a coated gate into the back. The air turned heavy. Sulfur mixed with the sweetness of decay. Along the walls, planters held vines coiled in deliberate spirals. Symbols carved into ceramic pots, roots dipped in wax. This is ritual gardening. These are sigils meant to embed energy in the plants. It's not just symbolic, it's functional. He's been growing ley-charged flora.
People ask for protection, for balance. I just sold them what they wanted. You sold them death.
On the far wall hung a painting, an old woman walking through a hedge maze, head bowed, cloaked in shadow, the title scrawled at the bottom, She Who Walks. That's her. That's the garden woman.
Everyone out, we're resealing this place. I want forensics in here now. You don't understand, it's not just me. I didn't start this.
Who did?
The circle, the hollow root. They still exist, and they were not done.
As they left, the storm finally broke. Rain slammed the van as they climbed inside. But inside the center, unseen behind the glass, the vines in the spiral planters twisted. One unfurled, slowly bloomed, then shriveled, spent. Chapter 6. The Circle, Unbroken. The churchyard at St. Bartholomew's hadn't seen proper prayer in 20 years. Ivy clawed over the broken headstones, and the wooden doors sagged on their hinges like the building itself had given up. The team gathered under a crooked oak as the rain traced slow lines down their coats. A statue of the Virgin Mary stared blankly through moss and time. Father Quinn stood apart, soaked to the bone, staring at the hollow space where a stone circle used to be.
I've seen this before, in my dreams, before we even got here.
Okay, no offense, but if your dreams are this accurate, why haven't we found these bastards yet? Because they were already inside the story. That's how cults work. They don't hide. They become part of the fucking landscape. They'd returned to one of the Hollow Root Circle's suspected meeting sites, an abandoned barn just east of Coventry, long forgotten by maps but still whispering under layers of rot. Inside, the air was colder than outside, the kind of cold that sat under your tongue and tasted like stone and secrets.
This was their sanctuary. I visited it once, before I left seminary. The archdiocese denied it existed, called it a rural myth.
Funny how myths leave bloodstains.
They fanned out. Felix took samples of the blackened soil near the old fire pit. Ewan documented the walls, still carved with symbols no one dared translate aloud. Hannah stood at the center of the barn, boots planted in the heart of the spiral. There was a resonance there, a deep hum that didn't come from any machine.
This place is charged. I can feel it through the soles of my feet.
These carvings, same geometry as the ones in Norfolk, but this time, there's something else. He pointed to a series of concentric circles surrounding a central glyph, a stylized eye inside a root system. This symbol, I think it means convergence. Like all these rituals, all these women, they were meant to bring something together, or someone.
They tried to bind her, the garden woman, but they failed, so they left her, watching, waiting.
Ewan kicked open an old crate. Inside, a leather-bound journal, swollen from damp and time. The pages were warped but readable. We gave her the first root. She bloomed, but the second refused. The soil rejected the sacrifice. Jesus.
They weren't worshiping her. They were trying to trap her.
And they used women to do it. Sacrifices buried in designed gardens like pressure points on a living map. Annika staggered, her vision blurred, but this time the others caught her before she collapsed. She was trembling.
There's another site, further north, older, deeper. She's buried under stone, but not sleeping. Then that's where we go next. If this circle is still operating, they'll return there. And if we want to stop this, we cut the root at its heart.
And what if we reach too late? What if another woman's already missing? What if someone else is about to bloom? No one answered. Rain ticked against the rotted windows, the barn creaked, and something not wind brushed the edge of the roof like fingers on wood.
They thought binding her would protect them, but you can cage nature. You can only delay the harvest.
Outside, a storm churned over the fields. The road ahead was lined with black branches and rotting leaves. Somewhere in the north, stones waited, and beneath them, something older than grief was stirring. The circle hadn't broken. It had gone underground. Chapter 7. What the Ground Remembers. The antique library in York didn't open to the public anymore. Mold had crept between the floorboards, and the heating system had long since given up. But the collection was untouched, thousands of volumes, private donations, church-led acquisitions, and one shelf that reeked of damp moss and burnt time. Felix Morrow ran his gloved fingers along the cracked leather spines. He wasn't looking for history. He was hunting intent. The language of plants is older than the language of man. He pulled down a tome bound in goat hide, Herbology and the Occult, 1731. Inside, the diagrams were precise. Roots formed sigils, leaves mapped energy points, flowers carried secrets from the soil to the soul. On page 119, a hand-drawn spiral. Below it, scribbled in Latin Radices Tenent Memoriam. The roots remember.
They used plants to trap memory like psychic carbon.
Meanwhile, Hannah sat alone in her late husband's study. The smell of leather and aftershave still clung to the room like ghosts in a trench coat. She wasn't looking for ghosts, though. She was looking for something worse. The envelope was in the drawer marked private, her name written in his hand. Inside one page. It read, "If you're rereading this, then the garden plague has returned. I never told you because I swore I'd buried it, alongside the others. We didn't kill her, Hannah. We fed her." A symbol was scrawled at the bottom, the hollow root circle's spiral sigil.
No, you weren't part of this. Not you. But she knew better. He had always hated the garden, wouldn't go near the roses after dark, would wake in the middle of the night with dirt on his hands and no memory.
Back at the library, Felix filled page after page of his notebook. Every ritual aligned with solar cycles. Every spiral linked to ancient geomancy. The bodies weren't random. They were pins in a map, and the garden woman, they hadn't created her. They'd awakened her. The anomalies in the soil, the rhythmic patterns, they were memories. The land is trying to replay what it was forced to contain. Felix dialed Hannah. She answered on the second ring. It's not random. The graves, the visions, the bloom patterns, they were not echoes. They were a fucking blueprint. Someone's rebuilding the ritual.
I know. My husband was one of them. Maybe the last.
What?
Doesn't matter now. What matters is stopping this before someone else ends up under another rose bush.
Outside the library, Felix slammed the book shut. Rain lashed the window. Across town, Hannah slipped the letter into a file marked Evidence Do Not Destroy. They didn't know it yet, but another garden had just bloomed in Darlington, a woman no one recognized. Same position, same spiral, same look on her face, peaceful. She's accelerating.
Then so are we. Chapter 8, Light Beneath the Storm.
Outside, the wind screamed like it knew what was coming. Inside the mobile HQ, papers flapped, wires jostled, and 5 professionals sat in a tension so thick it might as well have been smoke. They had lost contact with Father Quinn. Not a text, not a call, not a goddamn footprint. He was just gone.
He wouldn't vanish without telling us, not after what we found in York.
No hits on his plates, no CCTV near the rectory. Only thing on the street was a glitch in the local power grid again, right before he went dark. Same signature as the anomalies near the bodies, the surge pattern, whatever's happening, it took him.
He didn't go far. I can still feel him. No more visions, not without control. You blacked out last time. I'm not risking you spiraling again. I need to spiral.
She stood in the center of the van and closed her eyes. The others didn't interrupt. Couldn't. The temperature dropped. The lights dimmed. A lighthouse. Not real. Symbolic. The sea crashing below. A spiral staircase slick with moss and memory. Father Quinn standing at the top, clutching his rosary like it might still matter.
He's alive. Scarborough. There's an old lighthouse off the cliff path. He's hiding from something or protecting us from it.
Then we go now.
The drive to Scarborough was grim. The rain didn't fall. It attacked. The roads narrowed. Street lamps flickered. The North Sea thrashed against the land like it wanted back inside. The lighthouse rose out of the cliff like a knife handle, abandoned for decades, salt-eaten, sealed. Or so it looked.
Check every door, every basement. He wouldn't be here without purpose.
The air was laced with mildew and something darker. The spiral staircase groaned under their weight. They climbed, step by step, until Ewan stopped. That's candlelight. They entered the room. Small, round, walls etched with fresh symbols. And in the center, Father Quinn, alive, gaunt, pale, hands red with ink.
What the hell are you doing?
Finishing what I started. She's close, Hannah. So close I can hear the soil breathe. I had to disappear to keep her from following you.
She's already following all of us.
Then you'll need this. He handed them a scroll, old vellum, sealed with wax shaped like a blooming rose.
What is this?
The original circle doctrine. before the corruption, before the bindings, before they tried to chain her.
Instructions, glyphs, protection rights.
And something else, a location, the convergence site.
Where it all began.
The wind died, the sea pulled back, the lighthouse felt still, too still.
The hollow root circle never stopped. They just went deeper, and she let them because the bloom wasn't finished.
They would leave at first light, travel north, to a walled garden buried beneath a country estate long since erased from public record, where the first offering had been made and where the final one would be. Chapter 9. The Garden of Last Rites. The estate didn't exist on modern maps. They found it on a surveyor's sketch from 1873. No name, just a jagged outline and the words, "Private grounds do not disturb." It was 3 hours north of Scarborough, past the last functioning petrol station, beyond the edge of signal coverage where roads stopped pretending to be roads. They parked on a gravel shoulder and continued on foot. We were definitely trespassing.
Good.
The iron gate was rusted open. A faded crest above it, a rose coiled around a spade. The path beyond led through overgrown hedges and trees that leaned a little too far inward, as if trying to hide what came next. The garden sat in a sunken courtyard, stone walls on all sides, strangled by ivy. It looked wrong. Don't touch anything. The geometry's intentional. Every line, every plant. This is a ritual space. They descended into the walled enclosure like mourners entering a tomb. Moss covered the flagstones, thorned vines crisscrossed underfoot. In the center stood a crude stone altar, flat, cracked, flecked with dried blood.
This is the root. This is where the circle tried to bind her.
The air changed, denser, humming, as if the garden had started breathing again after years of forced stillness. Annika stumbled. Her hand brushed the altar. A shock rippled through her, and the vision seized her like a vice. A ritual. Candles flickering, chanting voices, a girl bound in ivy, a circle of masked figures, the garden woman behind them, watching. Then silence and her voice.
They chained the soil and fed it lies. Now it blooms in truth.
Annika collapsed. Ewan caught her before she hit stone.
She's okay, pulse is fast but steady, whatever she saw.
She's not angry. She's done waiting.
They examined the garden like it might detonate. Felix traced symbols etched into the inner walls. Ewan photographed them, even as the camera fought to focus. The images blurred unnaturally. The glyphs they rechanging, mutating as I look at them.
Because they were never finished. The original circle botched the seal. It's unraveling.
Then we stop it. We don't just document, we destroy.
You want to burn the site?
If that's what it takes, you said it yourself, Felix. This garden is alive, and we are standing in its mouth.
Felix poured accelerant. Quinn whispered prayers that hadn't been said in public since the 15th century. Annika knelt beside the altar, palm bleeding from a rose thorn she hadn't seen until it was too late.
One root must die so the others may forget. She needs me to finish it.
No more sacrifices. We were not giving her anything else.
You don't have to die. You just have to end the chain, break the pattern.
Annika pressed her bleeding hand to the altar. The soil beneath her pulsed once, then again, then stilled. The vines stopped twitching. The glyphs faded. And somewhere deep below the ground, a long-held breath was finally released. Did we stop it?
No, we convinced her.
The team torched the garden anyway. Flames licked the walls, smoke blackened the sky. The roots screamed as they died, but it wasn't pain, it was relief. And when the fire burned out, there was no spiral, just ash. Chapter 10. She Who Walks. The fire had turned the garden to ruin. Charred roots, cracked stones, and the brittle silence of something ancient finally silenced. But the story didn't end in ash, not here. In the days that followed, the reports stopped. No new bodies unearthed, no flickering anomalies, no spiral gardens, as if the earth itself had exhaled and chosen to rest. But the team wasn't resting. Father Quinn catalogued the last of the circle's writings under lock and key at the British Library's restricted archive. Felix submitted a report to the Forensic Anthropology Review Board that would never see publication. And Annika didn't speak to anyone for 5 days. Until now.
I still hear her in dreams. She walks, not angry, not vengeful, just present. Is she watching? No, she's waiting, but not for us anymore.
Felix stared at a digital scan of a leaf he'd taken from the Scarborough site. The vein structure was unlike anything in botany, spiraled, recursive. It wasn't a leaf, it was a message. She encoded herself into the flora. She's not a ghost, she's a system, a living memory loop built into the land. Hannah pulled the sealed envelope from the file, her husband's letter. She read it again. We fed her to protect what we thought mattered, but we forgot the truth beneath our feet. We forgot that nature doesn't forgive, it reclaims. She poured herself 2 fingers of whiskey, no ice.
And sometimes it teaches.
They met one last time, Annika, Felix, Ewan, Father Quinn, and Hannah in the cemetery behind St. Bartholomew's. The stone where the circle once stood had been cleaned, but not erased. Annika placed a single rose at its center. No spiral, no pattern, just the bloom. So what now? Write a report? File it under unsolved supernatural shit and pretend we were not still seeing her in the corner of our fucking eyes?
You can erase something like her. You can only honor it.
And trust she won't have to wake again.
Somewhere, a new garden was being planted. Someone would walk its rows without knowing the dirt beneath had once whispered names into the wind. And maybe, just maybe, it would stay quiet. But in the earth, under the roots, in the mycelial memory of the land, she still walks. The end. Thank you for listening. Please subscribe, ring the bell, and tell your friends about my listening library.